tireless dedication from researchers across the globe, are rewriting the very foundations of human civilization. From massive underwater monuments to underground tombs filled with priceless artifacts, from ancient structures that predate known civilizations by tens of thousands of years to evidence of sophisticated data storage systems created by Ice Age humans, we are witnessing a revolution in our understanding of antiquity. This documentary will take you on a global expedition, visiting 7 of the most significant and controversial archaeological sites on Earth. We will examine how modern technology, particularly LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar, is unveiling secrets that have remained hidden beneath soil and stone for millennia. We will investigate the implications of these discoveries and what they mean for our comprehension of human development, technological advancement, and our ancient ancestors' capabilities. If you are watching this history video, please let us know in the comments below where you are watching from and what time you are experiencing this remarkable journey through our past. We would love to hear from viewers around the world who are fascinated by these mysteries. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos exploring the depths of human history, archaeology, and the secrets our world continues to reveal. Now, let us begin our investigation into the ancient world. The revolution in archaeological technology. Before we delve into the specific sites that are revolutionizing our understanding of history, it is essential to understand the technological transformation that is making these discoveries possible. For centuries, archaeological research was limited by the constraints of traditional excavation methods. Archaeologists relied on careful manual digging, surface surveys, and educated guesses about where to look for evidence of ancient civilizations. While these methods yielded remarkable discoveries, they were inherently destructive, time-consuming, and could only reveal what lay in the immediate vicinity of an excavation site. The advent of remote sensing technology has fundamentally changed the landscape of archaeological discovery. 2 technologies in particular have proven revolutionary: LiDAR detection and ranging, and ground-penetrating radar, often abbreviated as GPR. These non-invasive technologies allow researchers to peer beneath the surface without destroying the very artifacts and structures they seek to understand. LiDAR works by emitting laser pulses from aircraft or drones and measuring how long these pulses take to return after bouncing off the ground, vegetation, and structures. By collecting thousands of these measurements, scientists can create incredibly detailed 3-dimensional maps of landscapes. What makes LiDAR particularly valuable for archaeology is its ability to penetrate dense vegetation. In tropical rainforests, where jungle canopy has hidden the remains of ancient civilizations for centuries, LiDAR can reveal what lies beneath the green. It can detect subtle variations in terrain that indicate man-made structures, ancient road systems, and settlement patterns that would be completely invisible to a person walking through the forest. Ground-penetrating radar, meanwhile, works by sending radio waves into the ground and analyzing the reflections that bounce back from objects and layers of soil with different densities. This technology can detect voids in the earth, different types of buried materials, and structures hidden beneath the surface. When used in combination, LiDAR and GPR create an unprecedented ability to map, understand, and study archaeological sites without disturbing them. The implications of this technological revolution cannot be overstated. Researchers are now discovering entire lost cities, hidden tombs, and ancient structures that completely escaped detection for thousands of years. These discoveries are occurring at an accelerating pace, and each one is adding new pieces to the puzzle of human history. What we are witnessing is not just the discovery of new artifacts or sites. It is a fundamental reassessment of human capability, sophistication, and the timeline of civilization itself. The sites we will explore in this documentary represent the cutting edge of these discoveries. They represent places where technology has pierced the veil of time and revealed evidence of human achievement that challenges our most basic assumptions about when and how civilization developed. Some of these discoveries, and that is precisely why they are so important. Science advances through questioning, investigation, and the willingness to consider evidence that contradicts established understanding. Gunung Padang, the pyramid that rewrites history. Our first stop in this global journey of discovery takes us to Indonesia, specifically to a site that has generated enormous controversy and intense scientific debate. Gunung Padang, located in West Java, Indonesia, is potentially the oldest monumental structure on Earth. The name Gunung Padang translates to Mountain of Light or Mountain of Enlightenment in the local Sundanese language, and it may indeed illuminate our understanding of human history in ways we never imagined. On the surface, Gunung Padang appears to be a natural hill, covered with vegetation and rising approximately 90 meters above the surrounding terrain. However, beneath this seemingly natural landscape lies evidence of an extraordinary artificial structure that could fundamentally reshape our chronology of human civilization. Excavations and detailed surveys have revealed that this hill is not entirely natural. It is constructed, or at least extensively modified, from stacked lava stone blocks arranged with remarkable precision. The most extraordinary aspect of Gunung Padang is its proposed age. Geological and archaeological analysis suggests that the structure dates back approximately 27,000 years. To place this in perspective, this would be nearly 14,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, 17,000 years older than Stonehenge, and thousands of years older than any previously recognized monumental architecture anywhere on Earth. If these dating are accurate, Gunung Padang represents not merely an archaeological curiosity, but a complete revolution in our understanding of human social organization, engineering capability, and civilization development. Traditional archaeological and historical frameworks place the emergence of complex societies, monumental architecture, and organized labor in specific regions and time periods. The development of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 years ago is generally considered the foundation upon which all subsequent civilizations were built. The ability to store food reliably allowed people to settle in permanent locations, develop specialized occupations, and eventually create the surplus that supported monumental architecture and complex governance structures. Yet Gunung Padang suggests that sophisticated construction and organized labor may have existed long before agriculture, long before what we call the Neolithic Revolution. The excavations at Gunung Padang began in earnest in the early 2000s, but it was not until more recent investigations that the full scope of the structure began to emerge. Researchers have identified multiple levels of construction, with stone terraces and platforms built in distinct phases. The lower levels consist of massive blocks of basalt lava stone, carefully stacked and apparently placed with intentionality. These stones were not simply arranged haphazardly. They show evidence of deliberate construction, with blocks fitted together in ways that maximize structural integrity. The dating of Gunung Padang has primarily relied on several methodologies. Volcanic ash layers found in association with the structure have been analyzed using radioactive dating techniques. Additionally, researchers have examined soil samples and analyzed the degree of weathering on the stone blocks. These various methods, when combined, suggest multiple phases of construction spanning a vast temporal range. The oldest phase appears to date to approximately 27,000 years ago, with additional construction phases occurring much more recently. This interpretation remains controversial within the archaeological community, and it is important to acknowledge the legitimate questions raised by skeptics. Some archaeologists argue that Gunung Padang is primarily a natural formation, with human modification occurring much more recently. They point out that basalt columns naturally form in distinctive geometric patterns due to the cooling process of volcanic lava, and that what researchers interpret as deliberate construction might simply be natural columnar basalt formations. Additionally, critics note that the dating evidence, while suggestive, is not definitive, and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. However, the researchers who have to studying Gunung Padang present a compelling case. They argue that the arrangement of stones shows intentionality that natural processes alone would not produce. The terraces appear to be engineered features designed to create level platforms on what would otherwise be a sloped surface. The pattern of construction, with different phases occurring at different times, is consistent with a site that was deliberately modified and expanded over an enormous temporal span. If Gunung Padang is indeed a constructed structure dating back 27,000 years, it raises profound questions about the people who built it. The most recent ice age was still in full effect at this time, with much of the world's water locked in massive ice sheets. Sea levels were dramatically lower than today, perhaps 400 feet lower. The coastlines of Indonesia and Southeast Asia would have been substantially different, with far more land exposed. The climate would have been cooler and potentially harsher, presenting different challenges and opportunities than those faced by later civilizations. Yet despite these environmental challenges, the people of this region apparently possess the organizational capability to coordinate large-scale construction projects, the engineering knowledge to build stable structures that would endure for thousands of years, and the cultural motivation to invest enormous labor in monumental architecture. These capabilities suggest a level of social complexity that contradicts the prevailing model of how human society developed. The purpose of Gunung Padang remains a matter of speculation. Its massive size and apparent sacred location make it plausible that it served religious or ceremonial functions. It might have been a temple, an observatory, a burial site, or a monument to the gods or to important ancestors. The terrace structure could have facilitated astronomical observations, with different levels providing optimal viewpoints for tracking celestial bodies. Alternatively, the site might have served purely practical purposes, functioning as a gathering place, a fortress, or a location chosen for some resource it provided. What makes Gunung Padang particularly significant is that it did not exist in isolation. Archaeological evidence suggests that other large structures may have been built in the same region during the same period. A few kilometers away, researchers have identified other stone structures and formations that might represent additional monumental architecture from this era. This suggests that the construction of Gunung Padang was not an anomalous occurrence, but rather part of a broader cultural and social phenomenon among the people of Ice Age Indonesia. The implications of this extend far beyond Indonesia. If sophisticated societies capable of monumental architecture existed in Southeast Asia during the Ice Age, the question arises, did such societies exist elsewhere? If human civilization was more advanced, more widespread, and much older than previously believed, then our entire historical timeline requires reassessment. Archaeological discoveries are not made in isolation. They must be understood within the context of what we know about human development in other parts of the world. Furthermore, Gunung Padang raises important questions about the nature of knowledge transmission and cultural continuity. How is it that a civilization apparently capable of constructing massive monuments apparently left no written records, no detailed artifacts, and no clear descendants who preserved knowledge of their predecessors' achievements? The lack of such evidence is perhaps the strongest argument against the claim that Gunung Padang is an ancient constructed structure. Yet absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence. Information can be lost, cultures can be destroyed or displaced, and archaeological records are inherently incomplete. The investigations at Gunung Padang continue, and each new phase of research adds additional data to the discussion. Modern technology allows researchers to understand the site with increasing precision without requiring the destructive excavations that would have been necessary just decades ago. As more evidence is gathered and analyzed, the true nature and age of Gunung Padang will likely become clearer. Whether Gunung Padang ultimately proves to be a 27,000-year-old constructed monument or a natural formation more extensively modified by human hands than originally recognized, it exemplifies the revolution occurring in archaeological discovery. The site challenges us to question our assumptions about the past, to consider evidence even when it contradicts established orthodoxies, and to recognize that human history may be far more complex and extensive than we have previously imagined. Petra, Jordan, hidden tombs and sacred artifacts. Our journey now takes us to the Middle East, to one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world, Petra, located in southern Jordan. Petra is famous as one of the new 7 wonders of the world, renowned for its stunning pink sandstone facades carved directly into desert rock faces. These elaborate facades represent tombs, temples, and dwellings created by the Nabateans, an Arab people who flourished in this region from roughly the 4th century BCE until the 1st century CE. Petra served as their capital and as a crucial trading hub connecting Arabia, the Mediterranean, and Asia. While Petra's surface features have been studied and marveled over for centuries, recent technological discoveries have revealed that the site contains far more than what is visible to the casual observer. Beneath the famous carved facades and the streets of Petra lies a hidden world of underground chambers, passages, and tombs that have escaped systematic investigation until recently. In a groundbreaking discovery announced in the early 2020s, researchers using ground-penetrating radar and other advanced scanning technologies identified a previously unknown chamber beneath the famous treasury, one of Petra's most iconic structures. The treasury, known locally as Al-Khazne, is carved into a massive rock face and stands approximately 40 meters high. It is the first monumental structure that visitors encounter upon entering the Petra complex, and its ornate facade with its distinctive urn and carved figures has captivated observers for centuries. What makes the discovery beneath the treasury extraordinary is what the hidden chamber contained. Excavations revealed the remains of 12 skeletons, meticulously arranged and accompanying an array of valuable artifacts. Among these artifacts was an object that immediately captured the imagination of researchers and the public imagination alike, a chalice that bears striking resemblance to descriptions of the Holy Grail in Christian tradition. The chalice is crafted from stone, possibly limestone or marble, and displays sophisticated workmanship consistent with Nabatean craftsmanship of the 1st century CE. While the chalice itself is unremarkable in terms of material, many Nabatean vessels were created from stone. Its context and positioning within a high-status burial suggest it held considerable significance to the people who interred it. The skeletal remains associated with the chalice show evidence of high status, with bones displaying signs of privileged diet and health status superior to that of common people. The chamber itself is elaborate, suggesting that whoever was buried there held a position of significant power and importance within Nabatean society. The discovery of the chalice beneath Petra has excited both archaeologists and those with interests in religious history and artifact mythology. For centuries, legends have circulated about the Holy Grail, the cup allegedly used by Jesus Christ during the Last Supper and said to possess miraculous properties. Quests for the Holy Grail feature prominently in medieval literature and have inspired countless expeditions and investigations. While most scholars recognize the Grail legend as largely literary invention rather than historical reality, the discovery of an ancient chalice in such a significant location naturally sparked speculation about its potential connection to religious artifact traditions. However, it is important to maintain a careful distinction between what we can demonstrate archaeologically and what remains in the realm of legend and speculation. The chalice found beneath Petra is certainly an ancient artifact of significance, and its presence in a high-status burial indicates that it held value and meaning for the Nabatean people. Yet connecting it to the Holy Grail requires large leaps of logic unsupported by historical evidence. The Nabateans were pagan people who left no records suggesting any awareness of Christian traditions. The chalice predates the birth of Jesus by several centuries if it dates to the 1st century BCE, which would make any connection to the Last Supper impossible. Nevertheless, the discovery of the tomb itself, regardless of the chalice's legendary associations, represents a significant advancement in our understanding of Petra. The chamber provides rare direct evidence of burial practices among the Nabatean elite. The arrangement of the 12 skeletons suggests that this was either a family tomb used over an extended period, with multiple burials added sequentially, or perhaps a mass burial following some catastrophic event. The presence of high-status goods buried alongside the skeletal remains provides insight into Nabatean beliefs about the afterlife and the importance of providing the deceased with valued possessions for the journey beyond death. The use of ground-penetrating radar in discovering this chamber exemplifies the revolutionary potential of modern technology in archaeology. The treasury had been visited by thousands of people every year for decades, yet the hidden chamber went undetected because it exists below the surface, invisible to any observer standing in front of the famous facade. Traditional archaeology would never have discovered this chamber. No archaeologist could justify excavating through the middle of the treasury without extraordinary evidence suggesting something lay beneath. Ground-penetrating radar provided that evidence, sending electromagnetic pulses into the rock and analyzing the reflections that returned. Variations in the strength and timing of these reflections indicated an empty space within the rock, the hidden chamber. The discovery beneath the treasury has implications extending beyond this single site. If such chambers exist beneath the treasury, it is reasonable to assume that similar hidden structures may exist beneath other Petra monuments. The entire site potentially harbors secrets that remain inaccessible to conventional investigation. As researchers continue to apply advanced technology throughout Petra, additional discoveries are likely. Each one will add new information about the Nabateans, their burial practices, their beliefs, and the complexities of their society. The Nabateans themselves represent a fascinating chapter in Middle Eastern history. Originating as nomadic Arab tribes, they gradually became settled merchants and administrators of a sophisticated trading network. Petra's location at the convergence of important trade routes made it an ideal location for a capital city. The Nabateans developed a unique culture blending Arab traditions with influences from the Mediterranean world, Egypt, and Asia. Their architecture, exemplified by the carved facades at Petra, represents a distinctive achievement, combining Hellenistic, Egyptian, and local Arab artistic traditions into something entirely their own. The Nabatean kingdom flourished for several centuries but eventually declined as Roman power expanded. In 106 CE, the Roman Empire annexed the Nabatean kingdom, incorporating Petra and its territories into the Roman provincial system. While the site continued to function for several more centuries, it gradually lost importance as trade routes shifted and political power consolidated elsewhere. By the Middle Ages, Petra had been largely abandoned and forgotten by the broader world, its ruins swallowed by desert and accessible only to local Bedouin tribes who maintained knowledge of its existence. The rediscovery of Petra by European explorers in the early 19th century created enormous excitement among Western scholars and travelers. The site's extraordinary beauty and evident historical significance immediately established Petra as one of the most important archaeological sites in the Middle East. Yet despite centuries of study and investigation since its rediscovery, the site continues to reveal new information and surprises. The discovery of the hidden chamber beneath the treasury demonstrates that even our most famous and well-studied archaeological sites may harbor secrets that only modern technology can reveal. What we are witnessing at Petra is not so much a revolutionary challenge to our understanding of history as a deepening and enrichment of that understanding. The Nabateans were already known to be a sophisticated, wealthy, and culturally sophisticated people. The discovery of elaborate burials and valuable artifacts simply provides more detailed evidence of what was already suspected. Yet the methodology used to make this discovery, the application of ground-penetrating radar to examine sites non-invasively, is itself revolutionary and represents a new phase in archaeological research. As we move forward in the 21st century, technologies will continue to improve, allowing researchers to examine archaeological sites with ever-increasing precision and detail. This will inevitably lead to the discovery of buried structures, hidden chambers, and concealed artifacts that have escaped detection for centuries or millennia. These discoveries will not always overturn our basic understanding of history, but they will consistently add new details, provide new perspectives, and allow us to construct increasingly sophisticated and nuanced pictures of how ancient peoples lived. The tomb beneath Petra, whether or not it harbors any connection to legendary artifacts, exemplifies this process. The chamber itself is a precious primary source document, revealing through its contents and arrangement something about Nabatean burial practices and beliefs. The artifacts within it, the chalice and other goods, provide evidence of craftsmanship, trade networks, and cultural values. The skeletal remains themselves offer insights into diet, health, genetics, and population dynamics. Each element contributes to our understanding, and all of it was made possible by a technology that simply did not exist a few decades ago. The expansion of Petra's mysteries, the discovery beneath the treasury, raises an important question. If such chambers exist at this one location, how many other hidden structures might exist elsewhere at Petra? The full extent of underground Petra remains unknown. The famous carved facades represent only the most visible aspects of the site. Beneath them lies a vast network of tombs, passages, and chambers, many of which have never been fully explored or mapped. Petra's history spans an incredibly long temporal range, from its initial settlement and development by the Nabateans to its later occupation by the Romans, Christians, and Muslims. Each of these periods likely left its mark on the site, with successive cultures modifying, building upon, and interacting with the existing structures. Untangling this complex archaeological stratigraphy, understanding how layers of occupation and modification accumulated over centuries, requires careful investigation and documentation. The application of technology like ground-penetrating radar across the entire Petra site could potentially reveal dozens or hundreds of previously unknown chambers and passages. The logistical challenges of such an undertaking are immense, and the financial resources required would be substantial. However, the potential rewards in terms of knowledge gained justify such an investment. Each hidden chamber represents a window into the past, a sealed time capsule that has preserved evidence of human activity for centuries or millennia. What particularly fascinates researchers is the question of why these chambers were hidden, or at least invisible, for so long. Some may have been deliberately sealed or concealed for religious or practical reasons. Others may have simply been forgotten as the site's occupation and usage patterns changed over time. The chambers may have served as refuges during times of conflict, storage facilities for valuable goods, or chambers intended for ceremonial purposes. Understanding their function requires careful analysis of their contents and spatial arrangement. The chalice discovered in the chamber beneath the treasury has been subjected to intense scientific analysis. Radiocarbon dating, stylistic analysis, and chemical composition studies have all been applied to the artifact. These investigations have confirmed that the chalice is indeed ancient and consistent with Nabatean craftsmanship, though the exact date of its creation remains subject to some uncertainty. The artifact has been cleaned, preserved, and studied by specialists in ancient Mediterranean cultures, and it now resides in a secure location where it can be accessed by researchers and occasionally by carefully controlled visits from the public. The broader significance of the Petra discovery lies not in whether the chalice is or is not the Holy Grail, it almost certainly is not, but rather in what the discovery tells us about the nature of archaeological knowledge and the power of modern technology to transform our ability to investigate the past. For centuries, Petra has been studied, mapped, and analyzed, yet this hidden chamber went undetected because it exists below the visible surface. The technology that revealed it, ground-penetrating radar, is relatively recent and continues to improve. As it does, we can expect more surprises, more discoveries, and more insights into how ancient peoples used and occupied these remarkable sites. The Pit of Bones, Spain's window into deep human history from the deserts of Jordan. Our archaeological journey now takes us to Europe, specifically to Spain, where a remarkable site reveals the remarkable depth of human history. The Pit of Bones, known in Spanish as Cima de los Huesos, is located in the Atapuerca Mountains in northern Spain. This underground cavern contains the largest and oldest collection of early human fossils ever discovered, providing an extraordinary window into the biology and behavior of our ancient ancestors. The Pit of Bones is essentially an underground labyrinth of passages and chambers formed by natural geological processes over millions of years. At some point in the deep past, early humans discovered this cave system, and over an extended period, either deliberately or through a process of natural burial, numerous individuals came to be deposited in a particular chamber within the cave, eventually forming a massive accumulation of skeletal remains. The depth of this site into history is staggering. The human remains found in the Pit of Bones date back approximately 400,000 years. To contextualize this temporal depth, modern humans, Homo sapiens, did not emerge as a species until roughly 300,000 years ago. The fossils from the Pit of Bones therefore predate modern humans and likely represent an ancestral human species or a closely related species, possibly Homo heidelbergensis or an early Neanderthal population. The Pit of Bones has yielded remains of at least 28 individuals, making it the largest assemblage of early human fossils from this time period anywhere on Earth. The remains include skulls, jaws, teeth, limb bones, and fragmentary pieces that collectively provide an unprecedented dataset for understanding early human biology. Detailed analysis of these remains has revealed information about the growth and development of early humans, the structure and capacity of their brains, the health conditions they experienced, and the variations that existed among individuals in these ancient populations. What makes the Pit of Bones particularly fascinating is not merely the quantity of fossil material, but also the circumstances of their deposition. The human remains are not randomly scattered, they show evidence of deliberate placement and organization. This raises the profound question of whether early humans at this time possessed behaviors that we would recognize as ritual or ceremonial. Did they deliberately inter their dead? Did the placement of bodies in this specific location indicate religious or spiritual beliefs? The Pit of Bones contains not only human remains, but also the fossilized bones of numerous animal species. The cave served as a trap for animals, with creatures falling into the pit and becoming trapped. This mix of human and animal remains has allowed researchers to establish the environmental context in which these early humans lived. The animal bones indicate that the Atapuerca region was cool and had forests and grasslands, with megafauna such as cave bears and large herbivores inhabiting the landscape. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Pit of Bones is that it contains not just occasional human remains scattered among animal bones, but a massive accumulation of human skeletal material, suggesting repeated deposition of human bodies over an extended period. This pattern is interpretable in several ways. Perhaps this location served as a burial site for a particular group or community, with individuals being brought there for interment over generations. Alternatively, the accumulation might represent victims of catastrophic events or disease, or individuals might have died elsewhere and been transported to this location for reasons we can only speculate about. The fossils from the Pit of Bones have been subjected to sophisticated analysis using modern scientific techniques unavailable just decades ago. DNA analysis has been performed on several specimens, revealing genetic information about these ancient humans. Remarkably, some genetic material has survived the hundreds of thousands of years since these individuals died, preserved in the cool, stable underground environment. This ancient DNA has provided insights into the genetic relationship between these early humans and modern human populations, as well as information about mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited exclusively from the mother. Isotopic analysis of the bones has provided information about diet, revealing the types of foods these early humans consumed. Such analysis can identify elements like carbon and nitrogen, which vary depending on whether organisms consumed plant foods or meat. Through isotopic analysis, researchers have determined that the Pit of Bones' early humans were carnivorous or at least heavily meat-dependent, consuming large quantities of animal flesh. This diet would have required sophisticated hunting behaviors and the ability to process and utilize large animals effectively. The Pit of Bones represents a remarkable case where the archaeological record preserves not just isolated findings, but a concentrated assemblage that allows for statistical analysis and detailed comparison among multiple individuals. Rather than studying a single skull or a few bone fragments from scattered locations, researchers can examine dozens of individuals and identify patterns in human variation, pathology, and development. Pathological analysis, the study of diseases and conditions evident in the bones, has revealed that these ancient humans experienced various health challenges. Some individuals show evidence of healed injuries, suggesting that they survived accidents or interpersonal violence. Others show signs of infections or other diseases. One remarkable skull shows evidence of a frontal bone fracture that healed, indicating that the individual survived a blow to the head and continued living for an extended period afterward. These findings humanize our ancient ancestors, revealing that they experienced suffering, disease, and injury just as modern humans do. The cognitive and behavioral implications of the Pit of Bones remain subject to considerable scholarly debate. The deposition of multiple bodies in a specific location, possibly over an extended period, suggests some level of intentional behavior regarding the dead. Whether this constitutes actual burial in the sense of deliberate interment according to cultural or religious practices, or whether it represents some other process, remains unclear. However, the mere fact that bodies were concentrated in this location, rather than scattered randomly across the landscape, suggests that early humans possessed cognitive capacities beyond basic survival and reproduction. They apparently engaged in some form of behavior regarding their dead that involved deliberate placement in a specific location. Furthermore, the Pit of Bones context raises questions about social organization and group behavior. If multiple individuals were brought to this location over an extended period, this suggests a degree of social organization, communication, and coordination. Groups would need to transport bodies, which would require labor, planning, and some motivation for doing so. These behaviors imply cognitive capacities and social structures more complex than we might have previously attributed to humans from 400,000 years ago. The investigation of the Pit of Bones continues, with new analyses being conducted regularly. Fresh fossil material is occasionally discovered during ongoing excavations in the cave system. Each new finding adds additional data points to the growing dataset, allowing researchers to refine their understanding of these ancient humans and their place in the evolutionary history of our species. What the Pit of Bones demonstrates is that early human history is far more complex than simplified narratives might suggest. These individuals from 400,000 years ago were not merely brutish, violent creatures concerned only with immediate survival. They demonstrated behaviors, possessed social organizations, and made decisions that transcended basic biological imperatives. They were people with lives, relationships, and apparently some form of cultural practices, even if those practices remain only dimly understood through the fragmentary evidence of archaeology. GABKLITP. The Temple 8T, the edge of civilization. Our journey continues to Turkey, where we encounter a site that has fundamentally challenged our understanding of the timeline of civilization and human cultural development. Göbekli Tepe, located in southeastern Turkey near the Syrian border, is one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, yet it remains relatively unknown to the broader public. This site, occupied and used by early humans beginning over 13,000 years ago, presents evidence that organized religion, monumental architecture, and complex social structures emerged far earlier than traditional models of human development would suggest. Göbekli Tepe stands on a hilltop in the region known as the Fertile Crescent, the area that is generally credited with being the birthplace of agriculture and civilization. The Fertile Crescent is where wheat and barley were first domesticated, where pigs and sheep were first brought under human control, and where the first permanent settlements emerged. These agricultural developments, occurring roughly 10,000 years ago, are traditionally seen as the foundation upon which all subsequent civilization was built. Agriculture allowed populations to settle in permanent locations, produce reliable food surpluses, and develop the social structures and specialization necessary for complex societies. Yet Göbekli Tepe challenges this chronology by presenting evidence of monumental architecture and apparently organized religion dating to 3,000 years before agriculture. The site was discovered in the 1990s and has been extensively excavated and studied since then. What archaeologists found was a series of monumental stone structures, primarily T-shaped pillars arranged in circular or oval patterns. These pillars are massive, some standing as high as 5 or 6 meters and weighing several tons. Each pillar is carved with intricate symbolic designs, images of wild animals, abstract patterns, and forms whose meaning remains enigmatic. The pillars appear to have been deliberately shaped and transported to the site, suggesting a level of organization, labor coordination, and engineering capability that contradicts the prevailing image of pre-agricultural societies as small, mobile, and egalitarian. The oldest structures at Göbekli Tepe date to approximately 9600 BCE, though some structures and features may be slightly younger. This places them in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, before ceramics were in use and well before agriculture had developed. The site appears to have been used ceremonially, with different construction phases occurring over nearly 2,000 years. The structures seem too elaborate and too numerous to represent practical shelters or storage facilities. Their arrangement and the apparent religious symbolism of their carved designs suggest these were temples or ceremonial centers. One particularly striking feature of Göbekli Tepe is the absence of evidence of permanent habitation. Unlike most archaeological sites of this antiquity, Göbekli Tepe does not show clear evidence of houses, storage facilities, or the other structures associated with permanent settlement. Instead, the site appears to have been a ceremonial or religious center visited periodically by people who may have lived elsewhere. This raises the intriguing possibility that these hunter-gatherers organized themselves to conduct lengthy pilgrimages or ceremonial gatherings at Göbekli Tepe, which would require even more sophisticated social organization and planning than permanent settlement. The carved pillars at Göbekli Tepe are masterpieces of early sculptural art. The designs carved into them are precise, deliberate, and appear to have held symbolic meaning for the people who created them. Animals featured prominently in the carvings, snakes, scorpions, wild boar, and foxes appear repeatedly. These animals may have held totemistic significance, representing spirits or ancestors. The abstract patterns and geometric designs suggest either decorative purposes or symbolic representations of concepts we can no longer fully comprehend. Some researchers have speculated that the T-shaped pillars themselves may represent human figures or ancestors, with the horizontal bar representing shoulders and the vertical section representing the head or body. One theory that has gained considerable support among researchers studying Göbekli Tepe involves astronomical observation and the recording of celestial events. Some of the designs carved into the pillars may represent constellations or may have marked celestial positions at specific times of the year. Göbekli Tepe's location on a hilltop would have provided excellent sightlines for astronomical observation. If this interpretation is correct, the people who constructed and used Göbekli Tepe possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge and used this knowledge to mark time and probably to organize ceremonial activities according to celestial cycles. Alternatively, some researchers have speculated that the pillars and their carvings represent a record of a catastrophic celestial event, possibly a comet impact or encounter with a meteor shower. This theory, sometimes called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, proposes that around 12,000 years ago, the Earth experienced a collision with a fragmented comet, creating a catastrophic climatic and environmental disruption. Some researchers suggest that the carvings at Göbekli Tepe might represent evidence of early humans recording this cosmic catastrophe. The scorpions, serpents, and other animals depicted might symbolize the chaos and destruction associated with such an event, while the pillars themselves might serve as monuments to this cosmic threat to human existence. This theory remains highly speculative, and most archaeologists remain skeptical of claims about comets or cosmic events being recorded at Göbekli Tepe. However, the theory exemplifies how sites like Göbekli Tepe challenge us to think beyond conventional interpretations and to consider possibilities that seem unlikely within the framework of traditional archaeological understanding. The very existence of monuments at Göbekli Tepe is in many ways as unexpected and paradigm-challenging as the comet hypothesis, so researchers studying the site are perhaps more open to unusual interpretations than they might otherwise be. What is certain about Göbekli Tepe is that it represents the oldest known monumental architecture on Earth. The structures are deliberate, engineered, and symbolic. They required significant investment of labor, planning, and resources. The site operated over an extended period, with different construction phases visible in the archaeological record. The effort invested in this site implies that the people who built it possessed not merely survival capability, but also the cognitive, social, and organizational capacity to engage in long-term planning, to coordinate group activities, and to create cultural and religious structures that transcended the immediate biological imperatives of food, shelter, and reproduction. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has forced a reassessment of prevailing models of human social development. It demonstrates that complex social organization, religious practice, and monumental architecture are not necessarily dependent on agriculture. While agriculture certainly facilitated the emergence of larger populations and more complex political structures, the evidence from Göbekli Tepe suggests that humans possessed the cognitive capacity and social organization for such developments well before they developed agricultural technology. This realization has profound implications for how we understand human history. It suggests that the path from hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural societies to complex civilizations was not an inevitable progression driven by technological innovations. Rather, human societies possessed the cognitive and organizational capacity for considerable complexity at much earlier dates. The question becomes not why civilizations emerged when they did, but why agricultural societies eventually came to dominate the world, displacing hunter-gatherer societies that were already demonstrating considerable cultural sophistication. The abandonment of Göbekli Tepe is itself a fascinating question. The site was apparently used intensively for nearly 2,000 years and then abandoned. What caused this abandonment? Climate change, demographic shifts, cultural changes, or the development of alternative locations for ceremonial activities might all have played roles. The archaeological record does not provide clear answers, but the fact of abandonment reminds us that human societies are not static, but change over time in response to shifting circumstances and conditions. The study of Göbekli Tepe continues, with new excavations regularly revealing additional structures and artifacts. Each discovery adds new information about the site and about the pre-agricultural societies that created it. In many ways, Göbekli Tepe represents the very cutting edge of archaeology, pushing researchers to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human nature and the trajectory of human civilization. The ancient record of knowledge, Ice Age symbols and data storage, one of the most intellectually provocative aspects of recent archaeological discoveries, involves the interpretation of symbols and marks found on bone and ivory artifacts from the Ice Age, dating back as much as 40,000 years. These symbols have long been recognized by archaeologists, but recent research has led some scholars to propose a radical reinterpretation of their purpose and significance. Rather than viewing these symbols merely as art or decoration, some researchers suggest that Ice Age humans were developing systems for recording and storing information, primitive data storage systems comparable in function, if not in technology, to modern hard drives or databases. This research, conducted by scholars examining materials from sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia, identifies recurring patterns and sequences in the marks and symbols found on bone and ivory artifacts. Some sequences appear deliberately organized, with symbols arranged in lines or patterns that suggest intentional arrangement rather than random marking. Furthermore, certain symbols appear repeatedly across multiple artifacts in different geographic locations, suggesting a shared symbolic vocabulary, a form of proto-writing or information encoding system. The implications of this research are extraordinary. If Ice Age humans were developing systematic symbol systems for recording information, they possessed cognitive capacities even more sophisticated than we had previously recognized. Writing systems, which emerged independently in several ancient civilizations only about 5,000 years ago, are generally considered one of the crowning achievements of human intellectual development. The emergence of writing enabled the preservation and transmission of knowledge across generations and distances, allowing for the accumulation of information that is foundational to complex civilization. Yet if Ice Age humans were developing comparable systems 40,000 years ago, they were conducting this intellectual work when the ice sheet still covered much of the world, when populations were small, and when survival challenges were, presumably, paramount. The discovery and interpretation of these Ice Age symbols involved painstaking analysis of thousands of artifacts. Researchers created databases documenting every mark on every artifact, looking for patterns and regularities. Computer analysis helped identify sequences that appeared repeatedly, suggesting not random marking but deliberate, systematic symbol use. The symbols range from simple lines and dots to more complex geometrical shapes, animal representations, and abstract designs. Some symbols appear to form sequences that consistently recur, as if each symbol in the sequence had a specific meaning or function. The practical purposes for which such a symbol system might have been used remain speculative. The symbols might have served as records of astronomical observations, helping humans track lunar cycles or seasonal variations. They might have represented a counting system or a way to record quantities. They could have been used to track time, record hunts or other important events, or to convey information about locations, resources, or dangers. Alternatively or additionally, they might have served religious or ceremonial purposes, encoding spiritual concepts or recording religious narratives. What fascinates archaeologists about this research is that it suggests the human capacity for abstract thinking and symbolic representation emerged far earlier than previously believed. Modern humans today take for granted their ability to use symbols to represent abstract concepts, to record information externally in written form, and to share complex ideas through symbolic systems. Yet the development of these capacities must have a timeline, a point in human history when our ancestors first developed the ability to think symbolically and to recognize that marks and signs could represent concepts and information. The Ice Age symbols suggest this development occurred remarkably early in human history, in the period when modern humans were first spreading across the world after leaving Africa. Cultural development. It suggests a continuity between our ancient ancestors and ourselves, that the human drive to record, preserve, and transmit information has deep roots in our species' history. The research on Ice Age symbols also raises important questions about the nature of knowledge and its transmission. If humans were encoding information 40,000 years ago, what happened to that knowledge? Why did it not continue to develop, eventually as we know it? Why did writing, when it finally emerged in Mesopotamia and Egypt, appear to develop without action to earlier? One possibility is that the Ice Age symbol systems were lost or abandoned as human societies changed. Climate shifts at the end of the Ice Age, around 12,000 years ago, transformed the environment dramatically. Megafauna went extinct, forests expanded, and human populations adapted to new conditions. The societies that developed were fundamentally different from Ice Age hunting societies. Perhaps the symbol systems developed in Ice Age contexts where they had been specifically adapted to that social and environmental proved less useful in the new agriculture that emerged. Symbol systems might have persisted, but were not recognized by archaeologists. Bone and ivory survive in the archaeological record because those materials are durable. Symbols recorded materials like wood, plant fiber, would leave no archaeological traces unless preserved under exceptional conditions. It is entirely possible that humans continued to use symbols for information recording on materials that did not survive, leaving gaps in the archaeological record. The research on Ice Age symbols exemplifies the new directions archaeological investigation is taking in the 21st century. Rather than focusing solely on monumental structures, settlements, and obvious artifacts, researchers are examining the minutiae of the archaeological record, looking for subtle patterns and signals of human behavior and cognition. Computer analysis and database technologies allow researchers to examine thousands of artifacts systematically, identifying patterns that would be invisible to the human eye examining individual objects. This approach, combining careful observation of artifacts with computational analysis of large datasets, is revolutionizing our understanding of prehistoric human behavior. Each new insight into Ice Age cognition, symbolism, and information recording adds another piece to the puzzle of how and why human consciousness and culture developed as they did. Continuation into the second half of Ancient Mysteries. As we continue our exploration of archaeological mysteries and ancient discoveries, we have encountered sites and evidence that challenge conventional understandings of human history in multiple ways. From the potentially pre-agricultural monuments of Gunung Padang and Göbekli Tepe, to the hidden chambers and sophisticated burials at Petra, to the deep human fossils and possible ritual behaviors preserved in the Pit of Bones, to the symbolic recording systems of Ice Age humans, a consistent pattern emerges. Human societies throughout history have been more sophisticated, more organized, and more cognitively advanced than simplified narratives suggest. We have also witnessed the revolutionary power of modern technology in archaeological investigation. LiDAR penetrates jungle canopy to reveal lost cities. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden chambers in ancient monuments. DNA analysis extracts genetic information from bones hundreds of thousands of years old. Isotopic analysis determines ancient diet from bone chemistry. Computer databases and statistical analysis identify patterns in vast quantities of artifact data. These technologies are transforming archaeology from a discipline dependent primarily on the fortunate survival of visible structures and artifacts into one capable of extracting information from the subtle material traces left by human activity. We have explored only 3 of the 7 remarkable sites that form the heart of this documentary. Our investigation has examined sites from Indonesia to Spain to Turkey to Jordan, each contributing unique evidence and insights into different aspects of human history. Each site challenges us in different ways, some by proposing unexpectedly ancient dates for monumental construction, others by revealing hidden chambers and burials, still others by preserving evidence of early symbolic and cognitive sophistication. The remaining sites in our investigation, Yonaguni Monument in Japan, El Caño in Panama, and the various Amazonian sites revealed through LiDAR, will continue this pattern of challenging conventional understanding and revealing new dimensions of human achievement and social organization across the globe. As we move into the second part of this documentary, we will explore these final sites, examine additional implications of the discoveries we have already discussed, and consider what all of this evidence means for our understanding of human history and our place within it. We will investigate questions about human migration, cultural diffusion, the development of maritime technology, and the possibility that ancient human societies achieved levels of sophistication previously attributed only to literate civilizations. The journey through archaeological mysteries continues, revealing a human past far richer, more complex, and more remarkable than we have previously imagined. Welcome back to our continued exploration of archaeological mysteries and ancient discoveries that are transforming our understanding of human history. In Part 1, we examined Gunung Padang in Indonesia, with its potential 27,000-year-old construction, Petra in Jordan with its hidden tomb and mysterious chalice, the Pit of Bones in Spain preserving 400,000 years of human evolution, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, demonstrating monumental architecture predating agriculture, and the remarkable symbol systems developed by Ice Age humans for recording information. We witnessed the revolutionary impact of modern technology on archaeological discovery and explored the implications of these findings for how we understand the human past. Now we turn our attention to 3 additional sites that continue this pattern of remarkable discoveries and paradigm-challenging evidence. These sites represent different regions of the world, different time periods, and different aspects of human achievement. Together with those examined in Part 1, they paint a picture of a human past far more complex, sophisticated, and geographically widespread than traditional historical models have suggested. Before we dive into these final sites, let us acknowledge the fundamental debate that surrounds all of these discoveries. The scientific and archaeological establishment is not uniform in its acceptance of these findings. Considerable scholarly disagreement exists regarding the dating, interpretation, and significance of many of these sites. This disagreement is healthy and appropriate. Science advances through rigorous questioning, debate, and the demand for evidence. What we are presenting here is not established consensus, but rather a presentation of discoveries and interpretations that represent the cutting edge of archaeological investigation and that challenge conventional understanding. The sites we will now examine, Yonaguni Monument in Japan, El Caño in Panama, and the Amazonian cities revealed through LiDAR, each contribute unique evidence to our evolving understanding of human history. Each presents mysteries that continue to perplex researchers. Each offers tantalizing hints of human capabilities and achievements that demand explanation and investigation. Yonaguni Monument, Japan's Atlantis beneath the waters surrounding the Yonaguni Islands in Okinawa Prefecture, Japan, lies an underwater structure that has captivated divers, researchers, and mystery enthusiasts for decades. The Yonaguni Monument, also sometimes called Japan's Atlantis, is a massive submerged formation located approximately 85 meters below the ocean's surface. The structure consists of enormous stone platforms, geometric forms, and terrace sections that bear a striking resemblance to intentional human construction. Yet determining whether Yonaguni Monument is a natural geological formation shaped by erosion and underwater currents, or whether it represents an ancient human-constructed monument predating known Japanese civilization, remains one of archaeology's most contentious debates. The Yonaguni Monument was first documented in the early 1980s when divers exploring the waters around the Yonaguni Islands encountered the massive stone formation. Subsequent investigations by both professional archaeologists and independent researchers have revealed additional details about the structure. The monument consists of a series of rock formations that, at least to many observers, appear too regular and geometric to be entirely natural. The primary feature consists of a massive rectangular platform approximately 25 meters in width and length, with terraced levels and what appears to be a paved roadway or walkway running across its surface. Supporters of the human construction hypothesis argue that numerous features of Yonaguni Monument are inconsistent logical formation. The right angles and geometric precision of various sections seem unlikely to result from natural erosion. The apparently worked surfaces showing regular tool marks, the apparent staircases cut into the rock faces, and the overall architectural coherence of the structure all suggest intentional human design and construction. Furthermore, proponents note that Yonaguni Monument is not an isolated anomaly, but rather represents one of several underwater structures in the region that share similar characteristics. If Yonaguni Monument is indeed a constructed structure, its age would be remarkable. The structure is now underwater at a depth that would require sophisticated diving technology or equipment to access. The most recent time that the area where Yonaguni Monument is located would have been above sea level was during the last glacial maximum, approximately 20,000 years ago, when sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than today. If the monument was constructed on dry land and subsequently submerged by rising sea levels following the end of the last ice age, this would date its construction to approximately 20,000 years ago or earlier. This proposed dating places Yonaguni Monument at the tail end of the last glacial period, when ice sheets still covered much of the northern hemisphere, and when human populations in the region would have been hunter-gatherers with no knowledge of agriculture. The monument would predate the oldest known Japanese settlements by tens of thousands of years. It would be older than Göbekli Tepe by several thousand years. The construction of such a massive structure during this period would require organization, planning, engineering knowledge, and the ability to coordinate large numbers of people, capabilities that we generally associate with much later agricultural societies. The skeptical archaeological response to claims about Yonaguni Monument focuses on alternative explanations for its features. Many geologists and archaeologists argue that the structure is a natural formation entirely explicable through geological processes. Underwater erosion, currents, and the fracturing patterns of rock as it weathers can produce surprisingly geometric shapes. The columnar formations created by cooling lava, as seen at Gunung Padang, can produce angular, regular shapes that superficially resemble human construction. Additionally, the human mind is prone to pareidolia, the tendency to interpret random shapes as meaningful patterns. We see faces in clouds and buildings in rock formations. The same tendency might lead observers to interpret natural geological formations as constructed monuments. Skeptics also point out that no artifacts have been found at or around Yonaguni Monument that would corroborate the human construction hypothesis. No pottery, no tools, no bones, no organic material of any kind has been recovered from the site, Traditional archaeological evidence would consist of some material traces of human activity, tools dropped during construction, food waste from workers, construction debris. The complete absence of such evidence is notable. Furthermore, skeptics argue that the tool marks and worked surfaces cited by supporters of human construction are not necessarily more precise than what natural erosion can produce, and that the geometric features are not so perfect as to be inconsistent with natural formation. The debate over Yonaguni Monument exemplifies a fundamental challenge in archaeology, determining when apparently regular or geometric features result from human intention and when they result from natural processes. Natural fractioning of rock can create right angles and parallel surfaces. Erosion can produce geometric patterns. Without artifacts, remains of construction activity, or other direct evidence of human modification, distinguishing natural from human-made formations remains difficult. However, the underwater location of Yonaguni Monument presents advantages for investigation in some respects. The underwater environment, while challenging to investigate, is also stable and relatively unchanging. Unlike terrestrial sites, where erosion, weathering, and human disturbance constantly modify archaeological contexts, underwater sites can be sealed and preserved beneath sediment. If Yonaguni Monument is indeed a constructed structure, the evidence of its construction should be preserved better than at most archaeological sites. Advanced imaging technology offers potential for investigating Yonaguni Monument without requiring divers to spend extended periods underwater or removing materials from the site. Three-dimensional sonar imaging can create detailed maps of underwater structures. Specialized photography and video can document surface features in detail. Such technologies might reveal evidence of tool marks, construction methods, or other details that would definitively establish whether the monument is natural or constructed. What makes Yonaguni Monument particularly significant in the context of our broader investigation is the question it raises about human maritime capability in prehistoric times. If Yonaguni Monument was indeed constructed and submerged by rising sea levels, it provides evidence of human activity at a time when most conventional models suggest humans lacked significant maritime technology. Current archaeological understanding places the development of sophisticated seafaring technology relatively late in human history, perhaps within the last 5,000 years or so. Yet Yonaguni Monument, if constructed, would suggest that humans possessed shipbuilding and navigation technology much earlier. Indeed, other evidence does suggest that prehistoric humans possessed greater maritime capability than traditionally recognized. The initial colonization of the Pacific, with human settlement reaching islands and distant locations, required some form of seaworthy boats. The settlement of Australia, occurring at least 60,000 years ago, could only have been achieved by crossing significant water barriers. These established facts indicate that humans possessed maritime capability quite early in their history, even if the specifics of their technology and methods remain unclear. The case of Yonaguni Monument reminds us that not all archaeological mysteries have been resolved, and that significant disagreement continues regarding the interpretation of certain sites and evidence. The monument sits at the intersection of geology, archaeology, and oceanography, requiring expertise from multiple disciplines to investigate properly. As technology improves and investigation continues, the true nature of Yonaguni Monument will eventually be determined. In the meantime, it stands as a challenge to conventional understanding and as a reminder that our knowledge of the human past remains incomplete. El Caño, Panama's window into ancient American complexity. Our investigation now moves from the waters of Japan to the jungles and archaeological sites of Panama. El Caño, located in central Panama, is an archaeological site revealing sophisticated and complex societies in pre-Columbian Central America. The site has yielded numerous burials containing high-status individuals, elaborate grave goods, and evidence of organized political systems, all suggesting that the indigenous societies of this region were far more complex and hierarchical than previously recognized. El Caño has been investigated since the early 20th century, but systematic, large-scale excavations did not occur until relatively recently. In the early 2000s, major excavations were conducted at the site, revealing a cemetery containing dozens of high-status burials dating from roughly 500 to 1000 CE. The graves were elaborate, carefully constructed chambers containing not only skeletal remains, but also quantities of valuable artifacts made from gold, jade, ceramics, and other materials. Among the most remarkable discoveries at El Caño are the burials of individuals apparently holding chiefly or elite status, marked by the presence of gold and other luxury items in their graves. One particularly notable burial, dating to approximately 700 CE, contained the remains of a high-status individual, possibly a chief or other leader, accompanied by quantities of gold artifacts, including a large ornamental plate with elaborate decoration. The quality and quantity of gold items in this burial indicates not only the wealth and status of the deceased, but also the sophisticated metallurgical knowledge of the people who created these items. Goldworking in pre-Columbian Central America represents a remarkable achievement in metalworking technology. The artisans who created the gold objects from El Caño understood sophisticated techniques including gold alloy creation, hammering and shaping, casting, and detail work. Gold items from Central America often show evidence of lost wax casting, a technique requiring considerable technical knowledge and precision. The objects created were not merely utilitarian items, but elaborate works of art with symbolic and likely religious significance. The presence of such elaborate and valuable grave goods indicates that the societies that buried these individuals had developed significant economic systems capable of producing and accumulating wealth. The concentration of gold and other valuables in elite burials also suggests the existence of recognized ranking systems and hereditary leadership, social hierarchies that distinguished elite individuals from commoners and that apparently persisted across generations. One of the most significant discoveries at El Caño relates to the structure of political power in this region. Multiple burials show evidence of what appear to be family groups or lineage groups buried in proximity, suggesting that leadership positions may have been held by members of specific elite families. The inclusion of similar types of items in multiple burials suggests a shared cultural identity and status marker system. This pattern is consistent with systems of hereditary elite power, where leadership passed from one generation to the next within privileged families. The El Caño site also yielded evidence of extensive contact and trade networks. Artifacts recovered from the burials originate from multiple distant locations. Shell items from coastal regions, jade from sources in Central America and possibly Mesoamerica, and other materials indicate that the people of El Caño were connected to broader trade networks that linked them with distant regions. These trade connections suggest regular long-distance communication and exchange, indicating the existence of merchant classes and organized commerce. Furthermore, the El Caño burials contained elaborate ceramic vessels, often bearing decorative elements and symbols. Some ceramics show pictographic designs that may represent early writing or proto-writing systems. The symbols and their apparent organization suggest that they may have conveyed information or represented concepts, though the specific meanings remain undeciphered. This evidence of symbolic expression and possible writing systems indicates that the people of El Caño possessed cognitive sophistication comparable to that of contemporary Mesoamerican civilizations like the Maya. The broader significance of El Caño lies in how it challenges traditional narratives about pre-Columbian American societies. Archaeological and historical writing has often emphasized Mesoamerica, the regions of Mexico and Central America where the Maya and Aztec civilizations developed, as the primary locus of complexity and civilization in pre-Columbian America. Yet El Caño and other recent discoveries in Central America and South America demonstrate that complex societies, sophisticated political systems, and impressive achievements were not confined to Mesoamerica. Instead, numerous regions throughout the Americas developed their own distinctive complex societies, complete with hierarchical political structures, long-distance trade networks, sophisticated craftsmanship, and religious systems. The societies represented at El Caño apparently had not yet developed agriculture at the time when the site was most intensively used, or alternatively, they relied on localized agriculture supplemented by hunting and gathering. This pattern contrasts with Mesoamerican civilizations, which were thoroughly dependent on maize agriculture and the sophisticated water management systems developed around agricultural production. The El Caño societies demonstrate that complexity and political hierarchy could develop in societies not entirely dependent on agriculture, challenging the assumption that agricultural surplus was a necessary condition for the emergence of complex societies. The question of what ultimately happened to the societies represented at El Caño remains unclear. The site was apparently abandoned around 1000 CE for reasons that remain speculative. Environmental changes, including shifts in rainfall patterns or drought conditions, might have rendered the region less habitable. Alternatively, demographic changes, the emergence of new political powers, or shifts in trade networks might have led to the site's abandonment. The archaeological record does not provide clear answers, but the fact of abandonment reminds us that even complex, organized societies are vulnerable to change and collapse. The investigation of El Caño continues, with new excavations regularly revealing additional burials and artifacts. The site has become one of the most important sources of information about pre-Columbian Central American societies, and its findings are fundamentally reshaping our understanding of complexity and civilization in the pre-Columbian Americas. The site exemplifies how technological advances in excavation methods, dating techniques, and analytical procedures are revealing new dimensions of ancient American civilizations. Amazon revealed, LiDAR and lost cities. Perhaps no region on Earth has been more transformed by the application of LiDAR technology than the Amazon basin. For centuries, the Amazon rainforest was viewed primarily as a wilderness, a vast tropical forest sparsely populated by indigenous peoples living in relative isolation from broader historical processes. The Amazon appeared to be a natural barrier and an obstacle rather than a location of significant human settlement or civilization. Yet in the last 2 decades, LiDAR surveys flying over the Amazon have revealed something entirely unexpected. Vast areas of the Amazon have substantial ancient settlement, evidence of what appear to be monumental earthworks, structured settlements, and complex human landscapes that have remained hidden by dense vegetation for centuries. The discovery of these Amazonian sites is particularly remarkable because it was made not through conventional ground surveys or excavation, but rather through satellite and aerial remote sensing. As LiDAR aircraft and drones equipped with laser scanning technology flew over sections of the Amazon, they revealed subtle variations in terrain beneath the forest canopy. These variations indicated human-made features, mounds, platforms, roads, and other modifications to the landscape. What appeared to the casual observer as undisturbed forest was revealed by LiDAR to be a landscape extensively modified by human activity. Among the most significant discoveries is the Amazonian site known as Gangola. LiDAR mapping has revealed that Gangola contains extensive earthworks, including raised platforms, connecting roads, and what appear to be structured settlements. The site shows evidence of sophisticated landscape engineering, with humans apparently modifying drainage patterns, creating elevated platforms to avoid flooding, and organizing settlements in geometrically regular patterns. The scale of these earthworks is impressive, extending over areas of many square kilometers and involving the movement of enormous quantities of earth and soil. Other Amazonian sites have been similarly revealed through LiDAR. These sites, collectively known as pre-Columbian Amazonian settlements or sometimes as lost cities of the Amazon, appear to date from the period before European contact. The exact chronology of these sites remains uncertain, as excavation and dating have been limited. However, ceramic evidence and some radiocarbon dates suggest that many of these sites were occupied within the last 2,000 years, with some possibly extending back further. The revelation of extensive human settlement in the Amazon has profound implications for how we understand pre-Columbian American civilizations, and for how we understand the relationship between humans and the rainforest environment. For centuries, Western science and scholarship have emphasized the pristine or virgin nature of the Amazon, the idea essentially untouched before European contact. This view was convenient and attractive. It supported the idea that the Amazon represented a natural paradise, a wilderness unspoiled by human activity. However, archaeological and ethnoecological research has increasingly demonstrated that this view is misleading. The Amazon was not a wilderness, but a landscape actively managed and modified by human societies. The distribution of economically important plants in the Amazon, palms that produce nuts, cacao trees, rubber trees, and other valuable species, is far too concentrated and non-random to reflect purely natural distribution. Instead, these distributions suggest that indigenous peoples of the Amazon engaged in systematic resource management, selecting for useful species and managing the landscape to favor their growth. Furthermore, the Amazonian soils themselves show evidence of human modification. In certain areas, the soil is enriched with biochar, charcoal from ancient fires, and other modifications that make it far more productive than surrounding soils. These enriched soils, known as terra preta or Amazonian dark earths, represent a technological achievement of indigenous peoples who apparently developed soil management practices that enhanced agricultural productivity. The existence of these improved soils in proximity to archaeological sites suggests that indigenous Amazonians were sophisticated agriculturalists who had developed techniques for managing forest ecosystems to maximize productivity. The LiDAR revealed sites represent the material expression of this landscape management. The earthworks platforms and settlement structures visible in LiDAR data represent communities that organized themselves spatially and maintained permanent settlements. The road settlements suggest systematic communication and exchange between communities. The scale of earthworks indicates that some communities possess the organizational capacity to mobilize labor for large-scale construction projects. The implications of these discoveries are multiple. First, they demonstrate was not a sparse wilderness, but a region capable of supporting substantial human populations. Estimates of pre-Columbian Amazonian population have increased dramatically based on archaeological evidence. Rather than tens of thousands of people, the Amazon may have supported hundreds of thousands or even millions of people before European contact. Second, the discovery of these sites challenges the notion that complex societies in the Americas were confined to Mesoamerica and the Andes. Instead, complexity emerged in multiple locations and took multiple forms. Amazonian societies appear not to have developed the monumental stone architecture or the writing systems characteristic of Mesoamerican civilizations, yet they developed their own complex societies characterized by permanent settlements, organized labor for public works, and sophisticated resource management practices. Third, the Amazonian discoveries demonstrate the continued validity and power of technology-enabled archaeology. LiDAR made these discoveries possible. Conventional ground-based archaeology would never have detected these sites. As technology continues to improve, as drones become more sophisticated, as LiDAR systems become more refined, and as computational methods for analyzing LiDAR data advance, we can expect additional discoveries. Vast areas of the world remain inadequately surveyed with advanced remote sensing technology, suggesting that many more archaeological sites remain to be discovered. Excavations at some of the LiDAR revealed Amazonian sites have provided material confirmation of the remote sensing data. Archaeological teams have conducted small-scale excavations, finding pottery and other artifacts consistent with permanent settlement and sophisticated ceramic production. The evidence recovered through excavation generally confirms what LiDAR suggested. These are indeed sites of substantial human settlement and activity. However, most of these sites remain incompletely investigated, and much work remains to be done in understanding the chronology, function, and cultural significance of these settlements. The question of why these Amazonian societies were apparently depopulated or abandoned remains speculative. European contact and the diseases that accompanied it were catastrophic for indigenous American populations. Some scholars estimate that indigenous populations were reduced by as much as 90% in the first century following European contact. Such mortality would have been devastating for Amazonian societies, potentially destroying the social structures and populations that maintained these settlements. Furthermore, European colonization brought forced labor systems, displacement, and intentional destruction of indigenous societies. These factors combined would have resulted in the abandonment of pre-Columbian settlement sites and the loss of knowledge about the societies that created them. The recovery of knowledge about these Amazonian societies has profound implications not only for understanding the Americas, but for understanding human adaptation to tropical forest environments and the possibility of sustainable human societies within such environments. Modern conservation efforts in the Amazon have increasingly incorporated indigenous peoples and traditional ecological knowledge, recognizing that long-term sustainability depends on understanding how indigenous peoples successfully maintain the forest and its productivity over centuries. The archaeological evidence from LiDAR revealed sites provides support for this approach by demonstrating that indigenous peoples were indeed managing the Amazon landscape in sophisticated ways. Technological revolution in archaeological practice. As we examine the three sites discussed in this second part, Yonaguni Monument, El Caño, and the Amazonian settlements revealed through LiDAR, we see consistent patterns in how these discoveries were made and how they are being investigated. Modern technology plays a central role in each case. Remote sensing technology revealed Yonaguni Monument and the Amazonian sites. Advanced dating techniques, chemical analysis, and DNA extraction make possible the detailed investigation of materials from El Caño and other sites. Computational analysis of large artifact databases enables the identification of patterns that would be invisible to human observers. The technological revolution in archaeology is not merely a matter of using new tools to accomplish traditional objectives more efficiently. Rather, technology is transforming what it is possible to investigate and what it is possible to understand about the past. LiDAR makes possible the detection of landscape features that extend over areas too vast to be systematically walked and surveyed. Ground-penetrating radar reveals internal structures without destructive excavation. DNA analysis extracts information from materials that previously seemed inert. Isotopic analysis determines ancient diet and migration patterns from bone chemistry. Computational analysis identifies patterns in thousands of artifacts simultaneously. The cumulative effect of these technological capabilities is that archaeology is becoming a high-technology discipline capable of answering questions that seemed impossible just decades ago. Where did people come from? The analysis of ancient DNA provides answers, revealing migration patterns and genetic relationships. What did people eat? Isotopic analysis of bones and teeth provides detailed information. How old are artifacts and sites? Radiocarbon dating and other chronometric techniques provide increasingly precise ages. How were sites organized? LiDAR and other remote sensing allow the creation of detailed maps without destructive excavation. The transformation of archaeology through technology is not without challenges and controversies. Some archaeologists worry that an overemphasis on technology risks overlooking the human and cultural dimensions of archaeology. There is concern that archaeology might become dominated by technicians and specialists in remote sensing, computer science, and chemistry, rather than by scholars trained in the historical and cultural interpretation of archaeological evidence. Additionally, some have raised ethical concerns about the use of certain technologies, particularly the extraction of DNA from human remains, which some indigenous peoples object to on religious and cultural grounds. Furthermore, technology itself is not neutral. The researchers who apply technology bring their own assumptions, interpretations, and biases to the analysis of data. A LiDAR image can be interpreted in multiple ways. Chemical analysis produces numbers that must be interpreted. DNA sequences must be contextualized and understood in relation to other evidence. Technology provides information, but interpretation remains a human enterprise requiring judgment and often subjective assessment. Nevertheless, the overall trajectory is clear. Technology is revolutionizing archaeology and enabling discoveries that were previously impossible. The sites and discoveries we have examined throughout this documentary are products of this technological revolution. Without LiDAR, the Amazonian cities would remain hidden. Without ground-penetrating radar, the chamber beneath Petra would remain undiscovered. Without DNA analysis and other chemical techniques, the pit of bones would tell far less about us. The conjunction of improved technology with rigorous archaeological practice and scholarly interpretation is producing insights into the human past. Implications for understanding human history. Having examined 7 major archaeological sites and the technological methods enabling their discovery and investigation, we can now consider broader implications. What do these discoveries tell us about human history, human nature, and the trajectory of human civilization? First, these discoveries demonstrate that human societies achieved remarkable levels of sophistication and complexity much earlier than conventional models had suggested. Gunung Padang, if dated correctly, shows monumental construction 27,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates religious organization and symbolic expression 13,000 years ago, at least 3,000 years before agriculture. The pit of bones shows apparent ritual behavior and possible burial practices among early humans 400,000 years ago. These discoveries push back the dates at which we can recognize behaviors and capabilities we associate with modern humans. Second, these discoveries show that human societies developed sophisticated capabilities independently in multiple locations. The construction of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Gunung Padang in Indonesia, and the Amazonian earthworks in South America represents separate developments of complex social organization and monumental architecture. While trade networks and cultural constantly occurred in ancient times, the parallel emergence of similar capabilities in geographically distant locations suggests that complex society development is not a uniquely European achievement, nor even exclusively a product of the Fertile Crescent and Mediterranean worlds. Third, the discoveries challenge simplistic models of human progress. The conventional narrative presents human history as a steady progression from simple to complex, from primitive to advanced, culminating in civilization. Suggests a more complex picture. Sophisticated society at different times in different. Some societies achieved remarkable achievements, then for reasons we could about. The Ice Age peoples who created the symbols examined in Part 1 possessed cognitive sophistication commons, yet they did not go on to develop writing or complex state. Human history is not a straight line of progress but a complex, multidirectional series of developments, achievements, adaptations, and sometimes apparent reversals. Fourth, these discoveries demonstrate beauty and creativity are fun traits. The urge to record information, to build organized social groups, to create religious systems. These are not ancient dimensions of human nature. People 40,000 years ago engaged in symbol information recording. People 13,000 years ago created systems and distance trade. The ascent culture and deep historical root back into the prehistoric past. Fifth, these discoveries provide evidence relevant to the ongoing scholarly debate about human consciousness and cognition. At what point did human consciousness develop? What language? When did abstract thinking, planning for the future, and understanding of cause and effect relationships emerge? These are questions of profound and scientific importance. Evidence we have examined distinctly human consciousness early in human history before modern humans spread out of Africa. The symbolic systems of Ice Age, apparent religious expression, and the appearance of even more ancient human ancestors all suggest that human consciousness have deep temporal roots. 6. Challenge assumptions about the environment and human society. Often assume that harsh or limit-strain human society, low complexity. Yet Ice Age harsh, cold climate in symbolic systems. The Amazonian developed complex tropical forest environment. These of the Fertile Crescent developments in a semi-arid. Humans have remarkable ability to develop societies in diverse contexts, adapting to while creating cultural sophistication. Discoveries highlight the established orthodoxies, conventional evidence. Gunung Padang is controversial. Scholars remain skeptical 1,000 years old. Yet the evidence is significant. Serious investigation. The interpretation of as a constructed monument remains, yet the questions raised that investigation continues. Science, the willingness to question standing and to consider, even when it challenges them, is essential for progress. The mystery of knowledge and cultural continuity, aspects of the archaeological record, relates to the question of knowledge transmission and cultural continuity. If humans were constructing monuments 27,000 years ago, why did that knowledge apparently disappear? If Ice Age peoples were developing symbolic recording systems 40,000 years ago, why did such systems not continue to develop and eventually become writing? If societies in the Amazonian cities were developing complex organizations, what happened to them? The fragmentary nature of the archaeological record complicates our understanding of these questions. The archaeologist observes an incomplete picture. Many aspects of human activity leave no material traces. Ideas, stories, songs, and knowledge transmitted orally leave no archaeological evidence unless they are eventually written down or depicted in surviving images. Artifacts made from perishable materials disappear unless preserved under exceptional conditions. Settlements built from wood and other organic materials decay and leave minimal traces. Consequently, the absence of evidence for knowledge transmission or cultural continuity cannot be interpreted as evidence that such transmission did not occur. Knowledge about the symbols used by Ice Age humans might have been transmitted orally among successive generations. No additional material traces for archaeologists to discover. The knowledge of how to construct monuments at Gunung Padang might have been maintained but applied only occasionally, leaving minimal additional evidence. Alternatively, knowledge may indeed have been lost. Societies can collapse, taking with them the knowledge and practices developed within them. Environmental changes can render previous knowledge irrelevant. Groups can be displaced or annihilated. Technology can make previous practices obsolete. The question of knowledge loss is impossible to answer from the archaeological record alone. What we can say is that humans repeatedly achieved remarkable accomplishments, left evidence of those accomplishments record, and then shifted their attention elsewhere, either through cultural change, environmental adaptation, or catastrophe. The archaeological records of brilliant achievements as well as evidence of sites abandoned, settlements depopulated, and accomplishments rendered forgotten by subsequent generations. The future of archaeological discovery. As we consider the state of archaeology in the early 21st century, we can reasonably say the pace of discovery will accelerate rather than diminish. Technologies enabling these discoveries, LiDAR, radar, DNA analysis, and are all continuing to improve. Furthermore, large areas of the world remain inadequately surveyed with advanced remote sensing technologies. The Amazon basin, one of the world's largest and most biologically diverse regions, has been surveyed with LiDAR in only partial coverage. Vast areas remain unsurveyed or inadequately surveyed. As more extensive LiDAR coverage becomes available, additional Amazonian sites will almost certainly be discovered. Similar situations exist in other tropical forest regions, Southeast Asia, Central Africa, and parts of the Americas, where dense vegetation has hidden archaeological sites from detection. Additionally, underwater archaeology represents a frontier of discovery. Rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age submerged vast areas that were previously above water. Coastlines from thousands of years ago are now underwater, potentially containing archaeological sites preserved beneath sediment. As underwater archaeology technology improves and becomes more widely applied, discoveries of submerged settlements, artifacts, and monuments seem likely. Furthermore, the combination of multiple technologies often reveals more than any single technology alone. Ground-penetrating radar used in conjunction with LiDAR, surface survey, and excavation can provide a much more complete picture than any single method. As researchers become more sophisticated in combining multiple investigative approaches, the quality and depth of understanding achievable will improve. The implications of continued archaeological discovery are significant. Our understanding of human history, human capabilities, and human diversity will continue to evolve and deepen. Sites like Gunung Padang, Göbekli Tepe, and the Amazonian settlements will serve as spurs to investigation, encouraging researchers to question assumptions and to search for similar sites in other parts of the world. Each discovery provides evidence against the notion that civilization is a uniquely Western or Middle Eastern achievement, or that complex societies developed in only a few favored locations. Implications for modern society beyond the academic and scholarly interest in understanding the human past. The archaeological discoveries discussed in this documentary have implications for how modern society understands itself and its relationship to both nature and history. The Amazonian discoveries, in particular, have direct implications for conservation and environmental policy. For centuries, the Amazon was viewed as a wilderness to be conquered, cleared, and exploited. The forest was seen as an obstacle to economic development rather than as a resource to be managed sustainably. This perspective has led to massive deforestation, species extinction, and environmental degradation. However, the archaeological evidence peoples successfully maintain the Amazonian ecosystems suggests an alternative perspective. If indigenous peoples were managing the Amazon landscape in ways that maintained both the forest ecosystem and human populations, then the traditional ecological knowledge of contemporary indigenous peoples may be more valuable than previously recognized by mainstream Western science. The archaeological evidence provides historical grounding for the claim that sustainable human use of tropical forest is possible. This has direct temporary conservation efforts, suggesting that the involvement of indigenous peoples and the incorporation of their ecological knowledge is appropriate but also for long-term environmental. Similarly, the discoveries of complex pre-Columbian societies challenge the notion that indigenous peoples of the Americas were technologically backward or unsophisticated. The monumental architecture, sophisticated craftsmanship, and organized political systems revealed at sites like El Caño and the Amazonian settlements demonstrate that Incan societies achieved considerable complexity. This historical understanding can contribute to contemporary efforts to recognize rights and to incorporate indigenous discussions of development and resource management. More broadly, the archaeological discoveries of human achievement throughout history provide evidence against racial and cultural hierarchies that have been used to justify exploitation and discrimination. The capacity for cultural sophistication, artistic expression, and technological achievement has been demonstrated across human populations in all parts of the world. Archaeological evidence from Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Europe shows that humans in all regions developed complex societies, created remarkable art and monuments, and achieved intellectual sophistication. This provides scientific assertion that human cognitive capacity is universal, and that differences in historical development result from geographical and contingent historical factors rather than from inherent human capability. Challenges in archaeological interpretation. Despite the remarkable discoveries we have examined, significant challenges remain in archaeological interpretation and in establishing consensus about the meaning and significance of archaeological findings. The dating of Gunung Padang and of Yonaguni Monument and the significance of various artifact categories all remain contested among scholars. The challenges in archaeological interpretation arise from several sources. First, the fundamental incomplete record means that evidence is fragmentary to multiple interpretations. Second, the past is not direct. Archaeologists must infer past human from material remains, and multiple inferences can sometimes be drawn from the same evidence. Third, archaeology inevitably involves subjective elements of interpretation, even when employing objective science. Fourth, the social context in which artists, funding sources, cultural and political value, which sites are investigated and how findings are interpreted. For these reasons, significant controversies continue to surround many of the sites and discoveries we have examined. Some scholars remain deeply skeptical of claims about the antiquity of Gunung Padang or the human construction of Yonaguni Monument. Others dispute the significance of certain artifacts or the interpretation of certain archaeological patterns. These debates are healthy and necessary. They reflect the ongoing engagement of scholars with fundamental questions about human history. What is important is that these debates occur within the framework of scientific investigation. Claims are scrutinized, evidence is evaluated, and alternative interpretations are considered. Sites are re-examined, new dating is conducted, and new investigative methods are applied. This iterative process of investigation, critique, and refinement gradually advances our understanding, even when significant disagreements persist among scholars. Rethinking human history, from linear progress to complex trajectories. Traditional narratives of human history often present a linear progression. Humans emerged from Africa, initially lived as hunter-gatherers, gradually developed agriculture, and subsequently developed complex societies, writing, and civilization. This progression is presented as inevitable and universal, driven by technological innovations and human ingenuity. Yet the archaeological evidence we have examined throughout this documentary suggests a more complex picture. Rather than a single linear trajectory, human history appears to consist of multiple distinct trajectories, some running parallel to others, some occurring in isolation, and some intersecting and influencing one another through trade, cultural contact, and migration. Furthermore, the evidence shows that complexity, cultural sophistication, and remarkable achievements emerged earlier and in more places than conventional models suggested. Agriculture was not a necessary prerequisite for monumental architecture or social organization. Writing was not necessary for record-keeping or symbolic expression. Complex political systems and long-distance trade networks emerged in diverse environmental and cultural contexts. Additionally, the evidence suggests that human history is not characterized by unidirectional progress. Sites are abandoned, populations migrate, and knowledge is lost. Societies that achieve considerable complexity can decline or disappear. The archaeological record contains evidence of human achievement at many points in history, interspersed with evidence of collapse, abandonment, and cultural change. This understanding of human history as complex, multidirectional, and geographically widespread is both more accurate and more humbling than traditional linear narratives. It suggests that human history is a rich tapestry of diverse developments and achievements, that the path to modernity was not inevitable but one of many possible, and that complex societies in the Americas were confined to Mesoamerica and the Andes. Instead, complexity emerged in multiple locations and took multiple forms. Amazonian societies appear not to have developed the monumental stone architecture or the writing systems characteristic of Mesoamerican civilizations, yet they developed their own complex societies characterized by permanent settlements, organized labor for public works, and sophisticated resource management practices. Third, the Amazonian discoveries demonstrate the continued validity and power of technology-enabled archaeology. LiDAR made these discoveries possible. Conventional ground-based archaeology would never have detected these sites. As technology continues to improve, as drones become more sophisticated, as LiDAR systems become more refined, and as computational methods for analyzing LiDAR data advance, we can expect additional discoveries. Vast areas of the world remain inadequately surveyed with advanced remote sensing technology, suggesting that many more archaeological sites remain to be discovered. Excavations at some of the LiDAR-revealed Amazonian sites have provided material confirmation of the remote sensing data. Archaeological teams have conducted small-scale excavations, finding pottery and other artifacts consistent with permanent settlement and sophisticated ceramic production. The evidence recovered through excavation generally confirms what LiDAR suggested. These are indeed sites of substantial human settlement and activity. However, most of these sites remain incompletely investigated, and much work remains to be done in understanding the chronology, function, and cultural significance of these settlements. The question of why these Amazonian societies were apparently depopulated or abandoned remains speculative. European contact and the diseases that accompanied it were catastrophic for indigenous American populations. Some scholars estimate that indigenous populations were reduced by as much as 90% in the first century following European contact. Such mortality would have been devastating for Amazonian societies, potentially destroying the social structures and populations that maintained these settlements. Furthermore, European colonization brought forced labor systems, displacement, and intentional destruction of indigenous societies. These factors combined would have resulted in the abandonment of pre-Columbian settlement sites and the loss of knowledge about the societies that created them. The recovery of knowledge about these Amazonian societies has profound implications not only for understanding the Americas, but for understanding human adaptation to tropical forest environments and the possibility of sustainable human societies within such environments. Modern conservation efforts in the Amazon have increasingly incorporated indigenous peoples and traditional ecological knowledge, recognizing that long-term sustainability depends on understanding how indigenous peoples successfully maintain the forest and its productivity over centuries. The archaeological evidence from LiDAR-revealed sites provides support for this approach by demonstrating that indigenous peoples were indeed managing the Amazon landscape in sophisticated ways. Technological revolution in archaeological practice. As we examine the three sites discussed in this second part, Yonaguni Monument, El Caño, and the Amazonian settlements revealed through LiDAR, we see consistent patterns in how these discoveries were made and how they are being investigated. Modern technology plays a central role in each case. Remote sensing technology revealed Yonaguni Monument and the Amazonian sites. Advanced dating techniques, chemical analysis, and DNA extraction make possible the detailed investigation of materials from El Caño and other sites. Computational analysis of large artifact databases enables the identification of patterns that would be invisible to human observers. The technological revolution in archaeology is not merely a matter of using new tools to accomplish traditional objectives more efficiently. Rather, technology is transforming what it is possible to investigate and what it is possible to understand about the past. LiDAR makes possible the detection of landscape features that extend over areas too vast to be systematically walked and surveyed. Ground-penetrating radar reveals internal structures without destructive excavation. DNA analysis extracts information from materials that previously seemed inert. Isotopic analysis determines ancient diet and migration patterns from bone chemistry. Computational analysis identifies patterns in thousands of artifacts simultaneously. The cumulative effect of these technological capabilities is that archaeology is becoming a high-technology discipline capable of answering questions that seemed impossible just decades ago. Where did people come from? The analysis of ancient DNA provides answers, revealing migration patterns and genetic relationships. What did people eat? Isotopic analysis of bones and teeth provides detailed information. How old are artifacts and sites? Radiocarbon dating and other chronometric techniques provide increasingly precise ages. How were sites organized? LiDAR and other remote sensing allow the creation of detailed maps without destructive excavation. The transformation of archaeology through technology is not without challenges and controversies. Some archaeologists worry that an overemphasis on technology risks overlooking the human and cultural dimensions of archaeology. There is concern that archaeology might become dominated by technicians and specialists in remote sensing, computer science, and chemistry, rather than by scholars trained in the historical and cultural interpretation of archaeological evidence. Additionally, some have raised ethical concerns about the use of certain technologies, particularly the extraction of DNA from human remains, which some indigenous peoples object to on religious and cultural grounds. Furthermore, technology itself is not neutral. The researchers who apply technology bring their own assumptions, interpretations, and biases to the analysis of data. A LiDAR image can be interpreted in multiple ways. Chemical analysis produces numbers that must be interpreted. DNA sequences must be contextualized and understood in relation to other evidence. Technology provides information, but interpretation remains a human enterprise requiring judgment, experience, and often subjective assessment. Nevertheless, the overall trajectory is clear. Technology is revolutionizing archaeology and enabling discoveries that were previously impossible. The sites and discoveries we have examined throughout this documentary are products of this technological revolution. Without LiDAR, the Amazonian cities would remain hidden. Without ground-penetrating radar, the chamber beneath Petra would remain undiscovered. Without DNA analysis and other chemical techniques, the pit of bones would tell far less about ancient humans. The conjunction of improved technology with rigorous archaeological practice and scholarly interpretation is producing unprecedented insights into the human past. Implications for understanding human history. Having examined 7 major archaeological sites and the technological methods enabling their discovery and investigation, we can now consider broader implications. What do these discoveries tell us about human history, human nature, and the trajectory of human civilization? First, these discoveries demonstrate that human societies achieved remarkable levels of sophistication and complexity much earlier than conventional models had suggested. Gunung Padang, if dated correctly, shows monumental construction 27,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates religious organization and symbolic expression 13,000 years ago, at least 3,000 years before agriculture. The Pit of Bones shows apparent ritual behavior and possible burial practices among early humans 400,000 years ago. These discoveries push back the dates at which we can recognize behaviors and capabilities we associate with modern humans. Second, these discoveries show that human societies developed sophisticated capabilities independently in multiple locations. The construction of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Gunung Padang in Indonesia, and the Amazonian earthworks in South America represents separate developments of complex social organization and monumental architecture. While trade networks and cultural contact certainly occurred in ancient times, the parallel emergence of similar capabilities in geographically distant locations suggests that complex society development is not a uniquely European achievement, nor even exclusively a product of the Fertile Crescent and Mediterranean worlds. Third, the discoveries challenge simplistic models of human progress. The conventional narrative presents human history as a steady progression from simple to complex, from primitive to advanced, culminating in modern Western civilization. Yet the evidence suggests a more complex picture. Sophisticated societies emerged at different times in different places. Some societies achieved remarkable achievements, then abandoned their settlements for reasons we can only speculate about. The Ice Age peoples who created the symbols examined in Part 1 possessed cognitive sophistication comparable to modern humans, yet they did not go on to develop writing or complex states. Human history is not a straight line of progress but a complex, multidirectional series of developments, achievements, adaptations, and sometimes apparent reversals. Fourth, these discoveries demonstrate that human ingenuity and creativity are fundamentally ancient traits. The urge to create art, to record information, to build monuments, to organize social groups, to create religious and ceremonial systems, these are not recent inventions but ancient dimensions of human nature. People 40,000 years ago engaged in symbolic expression and information recording. People 13,000 years ago built temples. People several thousand years ago created complex political systems and maintained long-distance trade networks. The essential aspects of human culture and civilization have deep historical roots extending far back into the prehistoric past. Fifth, these discoveries provide evidence relevant to the ongoing scholarly debate about human consciousness and cognition. At what point did human consciousness develop? When did humans develop language? When did abstract thinking, planning for the future, and understanding of cause and effect relationships emerge? These are questions of profound philosophical and scientific importance. The archaeological evidence we have examined suggests that distinctly human consciousness emerged quite early in human history, perhaps even before modern humans spread out of Africa. The symbolic systems of Ice Age humans, the apparent religious expressions at Göbekli Tepe, and the apparent ritual behaviors of even more ancient human ancestors all suggest that human consciousness and self-awareness have deep temporal roots. Sixth, the discoveries challenge assumptions about the relationship between environment and human society. We often assume that harsh or limiting environments constrain human societies to simple, low-complexity forms. Yet Ice Age humans lived in a harsh, cold climate yet created art and symbolic systems. The Amazonian societies developed complex organizations in a tropical forest environment. The societies of the Fertile Crescent developed complex civilizations in a semi-arid environment. Humans have demonstrated remarkable ability to develop sophisticated societies in diverse environmental contexts, adapting to local conditions while creating cultural achievements of considerable sophistication. Seventh, these discoveries highlight the importance of questioning established orthodoxies and considering unconventional evidence. The dating of Gunung Padang is controversial. Many scholars remain skeptical that it is 27,000 years old. Yet the evidence is significant enough to merit serious investigation. Similarly, the interpretation of Yonaguni Monument as a constructed monument remains disputed, yet the questions raised are important enough that investigation continues. In science, the willingness to question established understanding and to consider evidence seriously, even when it challenges conventional wisdom, is essential for progress. The mystery of knowledge transmission and cultural continuity, one of the most puzzling aspects of the archaeological record, considered holistically, relates to the question of knowledge transmission and cultural continuity. If humans were constructing monuments 27,000 years ago, why did that knowledge apparently disappear? If Ice Age peoples were developing symbolic recording systems 40,000 years ago, why did such systems not continue to develop and eventually become writing? If societies in the Amazonian cities were developing complex organizations, what happened to them? The fragmentary nature of the archaeological record complicates our understanding of these questions. The archaeological record preserves an incomplete picture. Many aspects of human activity leave no material traces. Ideas, stories, songs, and knowledge transmitted orally leave no archaeological evidence unless they are eventually written down or depicted in surviving images. Artifacts made from perishable materials disappear unless preserved under exceptional conditions. Settlements built from wood and other organic materials decay and leave minimal traces. Consequently, the absence of evidence for knowledge transmission or cultural continuity cannot be interpreted as evidence that such transmission did not occur. Knowledge about the symbols used by Ice Age humans might have been transmitted orally among successive generations, but left no additional material traces for archaeologists to discover. The knowledge of how to construct monuments at Gunung Padang might have been maintained but applied only occasionally, leaving minimal additional evidence. Alternatively, knowledge may indeed have been lost. societies can collapse, taking with them the knowledge and practices developed within them. Environmental changes can render previous knowledge irrelevant. Cultural groups can be displaced or annihilated. Technological innovations can make previous practices obsolete. The question of knowledge persistence versus knowledge loss is impossible to answer definitively from the archaeological record alone. What we can say is that human societies have repeatedly achieved remarkable accomplishments, left evidence of those accomplishments in the archaeological record, and then shifted their attention elsewhere, either through cultural change, environmental adaptation, or catastrophe. The archaeological record contains evidence of brilliant achievements as well as evidence of sites abandoned, settlements depopulated, and accomplishments rendered forgotten by subsequent generations. The future of archaeological discovery. As we consider the state of archaeology in the early 21st century, we can reasonably expect that the pace of discovery will accelerate rather than diminish. The technologies enabling these discoveries, LiDAR, ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, and computational methods, are all continuing to improve. Furthermore, large areas of the world remain inadequately surveyed with advanced remote sensing technologies. The Amazon basin, one of the world's largest and most biologically diverse regions, has been surveyed with LiDAR in only partial coverage. Vast areas remain unsurveyed or inadequately surveyed. As more extensive LiDAR coverage becomes available, additional Amazonian sites will almost certainly be discovered. Similar situations exist in other tropical forest regions, Southeast Asia, Central Africa, and parts of the Americas, where dense vegetation has hidden archaeological sites from detection. Additionally, underwater archaeology represents a frontier of discovery. Rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age submerged vast areas that were previously above water. Coastlines from thousands of years ago are now underwater, potentially containing archaeological sites preserved beneath sediment. As underwater archaeology technology improves and becomes more widely applied, discoveries of submerged settlements, artifacts, and monuments seem likely. Furthermore, the combination of multiple technologies often reveals more than any single technology alone. Ground-penetrating radar used in conjunction with LiDAR, surface survey, and excavation can provide a much more complete picture than any single method. As researchers become more sophisticated in combining multiple investigative approaches, the quality and depth of understanding achievable will improve. The implications of continued archaeological discovery are significant. Our understanding of human history, human capabilities, and human diversity will continue to evolve and deepen. Sites like Gunung Padang, Göbekli Tepe, and the Amazonian settlements will serve as spurs to investigation, encouraging researchers to question assumptions and to search for similar sites in other parts of the world. Each discovery provides evidence against the notion that civilization is a uniquely Western or Middle Eastern achievement, or that complex societies developed in only a few favored locations. Implications for modern society beyond the academic and scholarly interest in understanding the human past. The archaeological discoveries discussed in this documentary have implications for how modern society understands itself and its relationship to both nature and history. The Amazonian discoveries, in particular, have direct implications for conservation and environmental policy. For centuries, the Amazon was viewed as a wilderness to be conquered, cleared, and exploited. The forest was seen as an obstacle to economic development rather than as a resource to be managed sustainably. This perspective has led to massive deforestation, species extinction, and environmental degradation. However, the archaeological evidence that indigenous peoples successfully maintained the Amazonian ecosystem for centuries suggests an alternative perspective. If indigenous peoples were managing the Amazon landscape in ways that maintained both the forest ecosystem and human populations, then the traditional ecological knowledge of contemporary indigenous peoples may be more valuable than previously recognized by mainstream Western science. The archaeological evidence provides historical grounding for the claim that sustainable human use of tropical forest ecosystems is possible. This has direct implications for contemporary conservation efforts, suggesting that the involvement of indigenous peoples and the incorporation of their ecological knowledge is not merely ethically appropriate, but also practically valuable for long-term environmental sustainability. Similarly, the discoveries of complex pre-Columbian American societies challenge the notion that indigenous peoples of the Americas were technologically backward or unsophisticated. The monumental architecture, sophisticated craftsmanship, and organized political systems revealed at sites like El Caño and the Amazonian settlements demonstrate that indigenous American societies achieved considerable complexity. This historical understanding can contribute to contemporary efforts to recognize indigenous peoples' rights and to incorporate indigenous perspectives into discussions of development and resource management. More broadly, the archaeological discoveries of human achievement across the globe and throughout history provide evidence against racial and cultural hierarchies that have been used to justify exploitation and discrimination. The capacity for cultural sophistication, artistic expression, and technological achievement has been demonstrated across human populations in all parts of the world. Archaeological evidence from Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Europe shows that humans in all regions developed complex societies, created remarkable art and monuments, and achieved intellectual sophistication. This provides scientific grounding for the assertion that human cognitive capacity is fundamentally universal, and that differences in historical development result from geographical, environmental, and contingent historical factors, rather than from inherent differences in human capability. Challenges and debates in archaeological interpretation. Despite the remarkable discoveries we have examined, significant challenges remain in archaeological interpretation and in establishing consensus about the meaning and significance of archaeological findings. The dating of Gunung Padang, the interpretation of Yonaguni Monument, and the significance of various artifact categories all remain contested among scholars. The challenges in archaeological interpretation arise from several sources. First, the fundamental incompleteness of the archaeological record means that evidence is fragmentary and often subject to multiple interpretations. Second, the past is not directly observable. Archaeologists must infer past human behavior and beliefs from material remains, and multiple inferences can sometimes be drawn from the same evidence. Third, archaeology inevitably involves subjective elements of interpretation, even when employing objective scientific methods. Fourth, the social context in which archaeology is practiced, funding sources, academic incentives, cultural and political values, can influence which sites are investigated and how findings are interpreted. For these reasons, significant controversies continue to surround many of the sites and discoveries we have examined. Some scholars remain deeply skeptical of claims about the antiquity of Gunung Padang or the human construction of Yonaguni Monument. Others dispute the significance of certain artifacts or the interpretation of certain archaeological patterns. These debates are healthy and necessary. They reflect the ongoing engagement of scholars with evidence and with fundamental questions about human history. What is important is that these debates occur within the framework of scientific investigation. Claims are scrutinized, evidence is evaluated, and alternative interpretations are considered. Sites are re-examined, new dating is conducted, and new investigative methods are applied. This iterative process of investigation, critique, and refinement gradually advances our understanding, even when significant disagreements persist among scholars. Rethinking human history, from linear progress to complex trajectories. Traditional narratives of human history often present a linear progression. Humans emerged from Africa, initially lived as hunter-gatherers, gradually developed agriculture, and subsequently developed complex societies, writing, and civilization. This progression is presented as inevitable and universal, driven by technological innovations and human ingenuity. Yet the archaeological evidence we have examined throughout this documentary suggests a more complex picture. Rather than a single linear trajectory, human history appears to consist of multiple distinct trajectories, some running parallel to others, some occurring in isolation, and some intersecting and influencing one another through trade, cultural contact, and migration. Furthermore, the evidence shows that complexity, cultural sophistication, and remarkable achievements emerged earlier and in more places than conventional models suggested. Agriculture was not a necessary prerequisite for monumental architecture or social organization. Writing was not necessary for record-keeping or symbolic expression. Complex political systems and long-distance trade networks emerged in diverse environmental and cultural contexts. Additionally, the evidence suggests that human history is not characterized by unidirectional progress. Sites are abandoned, populations migrate, and knowledge is lost. Societies that achieve considerable complexity can decline or disappear. The archaeological record contains evidence of human achievement at many points in history, interspersed with evidence of collapse, abandonment, and cultural change.